Okay, we're recording.
All right, well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you guys all for joining us, and especially for the fact that it's on Friday at 3:30. We looked at our schedules, and we were trying to find some open spots for those of us, and this spot popped out for us, and it just sort of an indication of how busy things are, probably for all of you too, that it didn't even occur to us that it's 3:30 on Friday, but I was reminded some members of my staff, who scheduled 3:30 Friday? So the fact that you're here, thank you. We'll try to make good use of your time. Hey, before we begin, I did want to give you an update that we had the first round of interviews for the new AOC principal position yesterday. We were in interviews from approximately 10 o'clock to 3, and we are very encouraged by the candidates that we had to interview, and we have selected a number of them to go on for a second round. We had a member of the parent group join us, and great feedback. I'm very hopeful for the direction that we're taking. And I wanted to let you all know that for those of you that were part of that parent input meeting, we took very careful notes from that, and we transcribed those into the questions themselves. So it was really, I thought, an outstanding interview process, because we knew exactly what we were looking for to ask, and we knew how to gauge the participants' answers. So thank you for being a voice in that process. So two things we're hoping to accomplish today. One is we wanted to introduce to you an idea that we have for second semester if we have the opportunity to bring students back on campus in a blended format. It is I think symbolic of the times that we're talking about making bold moves to try to get kids back on campus. And by now, you're probably all aware that we are considering the idea of using Castaic High School temporarily for a period of a semester. Hopefully we'll be able to start sometime early second semester. And we are coming to this only after really looking carefully at the facility at COC and realizing that under the guidelines that have been established for us, what we can and can't do by the health department, there are some real strong limitations that could seriously impact the level of instruction, the type of experience your child would have if we stayed at COC in this unique situation. So in a moment, we're going to talk about that. I'm going to have Ms. Velick. We've actually put together an explanation of why we're considering this, and then what would be available to students should we move in this direction. And then we wanted to hear from you, because we have not made any final decisions on this. We really wanted to gather your input, because we know the AOC family is important, that we're all, everybody has a voice at the table. And then secondly, when we introduced those of you that joined us for the question and answer period, we noted that the AOC scheduling criteria has many very specific AOC type questions that we thought it would be better just to pull you all out and answer your questions specifically here. So those are our two goals: to talk about Castaic and then hear your feedback, and then talk about our proposal for the blended learning versus the online. I have members of my team here so they can all answer questions for you. And with that, I'll stop talking and turn it over to you, Ms. Velick, because I know you have a great presentation for everybody.
Great, thank you, Mr. Coleman. I wanted to first start out by thanking the district leadership team for your support, and also to reach out to my parents and my families for the thoughtful questions that were submitted. This morning we released our first round of FAQs that are specific to the needs of AOC as it relates to our scheduling, the way we're set up, so on and so forth. Keep the questions coming, because we are going to continue to update and try to be as comprehensive as possible to ensure that we've thought about all of the various moving pieces. Before we jump into questions and answers, I wanted to take a few minutes of our time this afternoon to move through a presentation that was recently shared with our Roots e-board and also the governing board. So wanted to provide that same basis for the conversation. I'm going to pull up my screen. Hopefully you can see my screen, yes? Mm-hmm. Okay, great. So Really, our focus has been this transition to blended learning. And as we have this conversation, we're really invested in how do we make sure that we are implementing protocols identified not only by the CDC, but the local LA County Department of Public Health to protect the health and well-being of our students and our staff. That is the objective across the board at all school sites, is ensuring that we are taking care of students, we are taking care of our families, and we're taking care of our teaching faculty. On top of that, our second guiding principle, the working principles, we want to provide AOC students an option to return to campus for high school coursework when we transition to the blended learning option. We want students who opt for blended learning to have the needed facilities and support while at school. And we want to establish some level of consistency for our students as well. And then finally, we want to ensure students are able to be on campus at least 2 days a week. We're going to talk a little bit about why it has to be 2 days a week for it to kind of make sense to return. That being said, this is what we know for sure at the current time. We know for sure that College of the Canyons will remain online through June. Okay, that has been announced. We know for sure that the following AOC facilities that are used by AOC are not available. So for example, the cafeteria, the computer labs, the health center, the library, the learning center, and the greater USEN are not available. It is not open to the public or students. So all of these facilities are closed. And then the facilities that are still being offered, they are being offered on an online platform only, which means that we are looking at counseling services, mental health services, and tutoring with no in-person contact here at the site. When we look at AOC and COC, because of the great partnership that the Heart District has with College of the Canyons, we have been very blessed to have a significant amount of space here at College of the Canyons. So when all systems are go and we're looking at a more normal time in education, when the college campus is open, our students have lots of space to spread out. Unfortunately, currently, physical space is an issue. AOC is home to 14 teachers, but we only have 11 classrooms, which means our teachers are sharing classrooms. Our classrooms are utilized throughout the day for high school classes. There is very rarely a time where a classroom sits empty. In addition to that, the ideal ratio when the USEN was built was a student ratio of about 25:1. Now we make it work with slightly bigger class sizes, but that's the ideal ratio. So when we look at social distancing students in a smaller classroom space becomes more difficult. And that impacts the next bullet, the size of the cohort. So if we were to use our AOC classrooms and divide into 2 cohorts, we are not able to safely distance, socially distance anywhere from 16 to 18 students in every single classroom that we currently have access to. And we are also not able to maintain one way in and one way out for our classes. That ingress and egress, there would be, we would be using the same walkways and pathways for students entering as students are exiting. For college coursework, COC has identified 3 large classrooms in Aliso Hall. However, AOC is not staffed to provide appropriate supervision and to ensure all health measures are being followed in those large classrooms, since the college instructors are not assisting us with supervision when the students roll out to the college classes. And then most importantly, or another big consideration, is COC does not have an outdoor space that provides shelter from heat and inclement weather during lunch. So with that, we then move to, all right, so we got some physical limitations. How might we adjust scheduling And that's where we ran into some scheduling limitations. So for example, AOC's schedule, the actual periods, the time in which each period is held, is dovetailed with COC's schedule. And that's what allows our students to toggle between their high school classes and their college classes. If we condense the high school schedule to match the district schedule at comprehensive schools, we create schedule conflicts for students who end up having to be in their high school and possibly their college class at the same time. So then we looked at dividing students into more groups of students, more cohorts, right? So we went from the idea of 2 to playing around with the idea of 3 to 4 cohorts. So if we go to 4 cohorts, we can very easily accommodate all students here at AOC. We would have the space in the classroom, and we could work out with our staff some coverage. The problem becomes, because we run a block schedule, our students take Monday, Wednesday, and Tuesday, Thursday classes, and their Monday, Wednesday teachers are different than their Tuesday, Thursday. Well, with 4 cohorts, your student is coming in 1 day a week, so they either see their Monday, Wednesday teachers or their Tuesday, Thursday teachers, but they are not able to see all of their teachers. So that became an issue as well. And then for the college coursework, even with 3 to 4 cohorts, we still will need at least 1 lecture hall, which then requires, again, supervision, okay? So on top of that, and we kind of already briefly touched on that, with the scheduling and the space issues, there was also some staffing limitations. Realistically, COC, College of the Canyons, we share a lot of resources. One of those resources are personnel staffing. So we would need the supervision for the lecture halls. We would need a health assistant since the health office, the health center is closed. And also a day custodian for all the daytime disinfection of frequent touch points. So as we started grappling with all of these logistical concerns, we started thinking about, well, what is a good plan B? And we thought about, outside of the box, how do we explore an option for a temporary satellite site for AOC? At this time, we settled on 2 potential sites based on just the sheer number of classrooms available. The first being Hart High School, the second being Castaic High. After much discussion, Castaic High School was selected as the best fit for the specific needs of our student body, okay? And in looking at Castaic, here are the things that we really talked about. So we'll kind of start in the middle with the largest circle. We had the availability of 14 dedicated classroom spaces for each AOC teacher. This means each teacher has a classroom space of their own. We are not sharing personnel between classrooms. And that really falls into the safety health guidelines that we're trying to follow from the county. And then we also started looking at support services. Our families depend on our office staff, for an example, to be kind of that link between home and school, between teachers and so on and so forth. So what was really, really nice is that at Castaic, Mrs. Hagman, who's also on this call with us, there is availability of office space for AOC's office staff, and we're going to look at in just a few moments what that looks like. We also have shared resources, much like at COC. We are able to tap into the personnel and the staff that are already trained, are already Hart District employees, and tap into support from campus supervisors, the custodians, and the health assistant. Another big piece was the smaller enrollment at Castaic High School. They only have 9th and 10th graders. So at most, their population tips at about 700 students. Half of that on any given day is 350. AOC has a touch over 400, half of that is 200. So if 100% of students selected hybrid learning or blended learning, we would be looking at a max capacity of about 550 students on any given day, which Castaic High School can more than handle and can allow the most amount of space between students and student groups. and that's the limiting the overcrowding. Hart High, we'd be looking at more like 13 to 1,400 students. So we're talking about half the number of students. We're talking about similar enrollments as our junior high schools. Being at Castaic High School with the 2 cohorts, we can guarantee 2 days of in-person instruction. A Monday, Tuesday cohort, that would be cohort A, and then a Wednesday, Thursday cohort, a cohort B. And then also availability of office staff for the counselor, the new principal, our social worker, the availability of 3 large science classrooms for the COC online classes, and then also covered lunch areas. So that's a lot of information that I've tossed out, and I wish I could take everyone on a tour of the Castaic campus because it is absolutely beautiful. So while we can't actually get that done today, we're going to take a really quick 3-minute virtual tour of that campus to kind of give you an idea of what your student's day may look like, or your student's educational environment may look like at Castaic High.
Here is a quick tour of Castaic High School. Upon arriving at Castaic High School, your student will be greeted by campus supervisors. Castaic High School also offers our hardworking AOC office staff with space to spread out. In addition to office space, Castaic High School offers a fully functioning health office. With Castaic High School's large campus, our AOC students will have an opportunity to utilize outdoor workspaces to complete schoolwork. At Castaic High School, each teacher will have their own dedicated classroom with a capacity for up to 18 students spaced 6 feet apart. Students in cohort A will utilize unmarked desks, while students in cohort B will use desks marked by blue tape. We will also have access to 3 large science classrooms for AOC students to utilize for their COC classes or during open periods. Even with the social distancing requirements of 6 feet, each one of these classrooms can accommodate up to 30 students. AOC students will also have access to Castaic High School's beautiful library. The library is truly unique as it offers multiple spaces for students to study and complete work. AOC students will have access to multiple outdoor spaces to eat lunch. Depending on weather, students will have access to both open air and sheltered lunch locations throughout campus. On behalf of Academy of the Canyons, the William S. Hart Union High School District, and College of the Canyons, we thank you for your time, flexibility, understanding, and support.
Ms. Bellick, may I jump in?
Yes, of course.
Okay. So we wanted to, I noticed there was a few folks that came in and maybe missed the little introduction. So let me quickly bring everybody up to speed. And if you don't have it already, if everyone can make sure that they mute until we have the chance to ask questions. So in summary, we are hoping as a district to have the opportunity to welcome some students back to campus in a limited fashion sometime in the spring semester. All of that will be dependent upon what the County Department of Public Health data shows and allows us to do. But when we return as a district, including our AOC students, we will be returning in a limited fashion. There are limitations that have to do with distance between students. We have to make sure we have 6 feet of distance. Students will be wearing masks. And when we looked at that specifically at our facility at COC, we realized that there were some severe limitations that were presented to us. And in short, they have a lot to do with the facilities, the classroom size themselves. If we anticipate that we were only able to have half of our students there each day, we don't have enough classrooms for all the teachers. And we also don't have classrooms big enough to accommodate those adjusted blended learning sizes. Also, I just wanted to emphasize a lot of the services that our students take advantage of are services offered through COC. We're able to make this unique collaboration work because our students are able to go to their mental health supports that they have there and use their health department. And now that they are closed and online for second semester, those aren't available to our students, which presents some real challenges to us. And so the idea here is that this is not a permanent move. There is no plan for us actually to stay at Castaic. As soon as we can, we will return to COC. In fact, there actually is a grant that we write together with our friends at COC each year that talks about the need for us to be located on the community college campus. And so that will not change moving forward. But what this option presents to us is the ability to keep our students together with all of the staff, with your unique schedule in a brand new facility with all new classrooms and all new everything, so that we could get through the second semester welcoming students back on campus and providing them that same high level of support that they would need as we make those small steps toward a full reintroduction to campus. We recognize that there are challenges whichever way we go. You know, if we stay, we've highlighted for you a lot of the challenges that we have, and we fear that if we stay and we try to plug those holes, that it's going to be much less of a positive experience than people hope for. But we also recognize there's challenges moving to Castaic, primarily having to do with transportation, because we do not have the capacity to provide transportation for students each day. But that's why we're bringing it to you to see if the idea that if this is temporary, possibly for at the most a semester, and it would involve 2 days a week if you chose to be on campus, or you could still choose to be online and you wouldn't have to make those travel, if that would be a trade-off that would be of interest to parents. So Ms. Bellick, I apologize for summarizing, but I wanted to sort of, that's where we're at. We have not made this final decision. We have looked at it. We've really done a lot of research because if I may share, Ms. Bellick, you please jump in, and any other parent, we brought our Roots group first to do a little walkthrough with us. And I think it's fair to say that there was very positive feedback about seeing the place and recognizing that what a unique confluence of events that we have this essentially brand new high school with all these brand new facilities and brand new classrooms that haven't been occupied, that we could move an entire school temporarily over to help them, you know, stay as AOC. It present itself to us, but we don't want to make any unilateral moves without your input. So Mr. Bellick, I'll turn it over to you to maybe host some questions.
Wonderful. And Mr. Coleman, thank you for that, that great synopsis. So at this point, that's kind of the informational session. I know I moved through it quickly, but there's a lot of these factors we've talked about. As Mr. Coleman indicated, today we're really interested on feedback from families. We're going to have to make compromises somewhere for us to be able to bring students back to campus, and really taking a look at where is the most stable, which one of these options is the most stable, remaining at AOC or transitioning to Castaic, and which provides us or gets us as close to our goals as possible. So with that being said, as far as questions go, I think because we have such a large group, I would love for us to go ahead and use the chat feature. If you go to the bottom of your screen, you'll see security, participants, and chat, and then start asking questions there. I'll read out the questions and then either provide an answer or look to the team, the district team, to provide guidance.
And Ms. Velik, may I make a suggestion on that, if I may? And I apologize for jumping in. You know, what worked really well, some of these are AOC specific, which are going to be actually, I think, better by you or perhaps Ms. Hagman, but some of them may be able to be answered by the team. And what we did actually at our Q&A was allow people to sort of grab the questions and just answer. Is that okay if I just put it out to the cabinet? Because there was one that talked about, I can even grab, and I know that Kathy's on board, Ms. Hunter. Can you speak to, or would students be able to have lunch on campus at COC, or excuse me, at Castaic?
You'd like me to address that?
Yeah, Kathy, go ahead.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. I'm sorry that I'm not on video today, but I'm happy to be joining you. And yes, things are a little different at the campus over at Castaic because it is so large. Our issue on our other campuses with offering lunch on campus daily is the fact that we can't keep kids far enough apart to maintain the social distance. And so what we'd be looking at AOC, on the Castaic campus would still be what we call the grab and go lunch provided at the kiosks. So there'd be separate stations for the kids to pick up their lunch every day, but there's enough outdoor seating, both sheltered and unsheltered, for us to be able to put markers down to schedule students to sit at least 6 feet apart so we can maintain that social distance, which is what's required. We just haven't been able to provide that on any of our other campuses just because of supervision needs.
And may I jump in and just say, one of the questions I'm glad someone asked is this Castaic idea a prelude to closing AOC? I want to just be absolutely upfront and say there is zero thought or consideration of closing AOC. And we have a board member here. I know Dr. Moore is here as well. There is no, this is a gem for our district. This is actually an intent for us actually to preserve the outstanding experience students have of kind of the smaller school feel. And we think we can do that on this brand new campus, but there's no intent for us to close it at all. In fact, AOC's home is the USEN at, excuse me, it's the USEN, yeah, the USEN, right? The building. And we want to move back there as soon as we can bring kids back to class. So, and is anybody else that can, feel free to jump in on those questions.
So I see a question from Michael. If students offer online learning, will they still have the same AOC teachers? Absolutely. So if you're opting for the online cohort, you keep our AOC teachers. We're going to be doing concurrent instruction. So our online students and our in-classroom, in-person students are receiving the same instruction.
There was a question about the unique way that AOC students come and go off the campus. And the fact that actually they'll be taking those COC classes online. So one of the key pieces here is that there is so much new space at AOC, excuse me, at Castaic, that when students have their COC classes, we actually have large, they're currently their science classrooms, really large spaces that they can go with their laptops or their Chromebooks, and they can, between their, let's say their 11 and 12:30 in-person class, they can actually take that on campus in a supervised space. And, you know, we talked about how we'd have to work out the details. We understand that there's kind of a unique thing about AOC where kids can come and go because they're usually taking college classes. And so for juniors and seniors, I would anticipate that we would look to maybe have that same sort of flexibility, but we might want to talk a little bit as a group about whether there would be a need for freshmen and sophomores to do that, because if you've been out to Castaic, it's beautiful when you get there, but there's a long winding road that goes there, and it's not as if kids really need to actually be walking off campus. In fact, there's nowhere to walk to. So we would work out those particular details, but those who had to take a COC class could do it on campus in a supervised space, meeting the guidelines that have been established by the county.
All right, another question that I see from earlier in the chat was from Kirsten. She was asking about, similar to what Mr. Coleman just commented on, the ability to come and go from campus. So I think we've covered, like, if you are a student driver and you can come and go, that is fine. I also got some follow-up emails today and like to just clarify that information. If you have a student who has a morning COC class and then they have enough travel time between home and Castaic, they are more than welcome to take that COC class from home and then come onto campus for the high school class. That will be permittable. And on the opposite side of the day, a parent had asked, I have a student whose COC class starts at 2:30 and ends around 5:30. What do I do about my student? Because the campus will close about the 4 o'clock mark. In that case, the student has enough time from when their third period class ends at 1:15 until the start of the COC class, or 75 minutes. That should be enough time to make it home, to be able to take that COC class from home. So those are going to be issues and items that we will look at, specific student schedules and student needs with individual families to try to find the best working solution for classes that extend beyond the 7:45 to 3 p.m. mark.
Ms. Velick, there's a question about where the AOC classrooms will be located on the Castaic High School campus. I don't know if you want to describe that to the group or if you have a graphic that you can share.
So I have a graphic I can share. I have worked with Mrs. Hagman, and hopefully you can see the graphic now. The classrooms that are highlighted in yellow, these are the classrooms that we would be using. There's 12 classrooms between building 5 and 6. And then on the second floor of the main admin building, which is up here, if you see my arrow moving, there will be 2 additional classrooms for students. One of them will be our wellness area and our social emotional learning. Jerry will be there. And then we'll have these 3 large science classrooms for students to utilize. In addition, this is also where Mrs. Hagman and I are looking at placing our counselor, our social worker, and our principal, so that students that have open periods or need any support beyond the high school classes, they have AOC staff close by.
Mrs. Bellick, there's a question on, is this blended learning plan only 2 days a week, or is there a possibility for 5 days a week on campus? At this point, due to Department of Public Health guidelines, we have to divide all of our students into cohorts. So we have to have only 50% of a class there at a time to be able to accommodate the 6-foot social distance. And we can only do that then 2 days per week.
Thank you, Mrs. Hunter.
And yes, the next question, if the students go 2 days a week for in-person, would they have the same Castaic teachers or same AOC teachers for the online days? It would be their same AOC teachers for the online days.
There's a question about using the track and the field, and that question is a great question, and the response to that is maybe. At the time that we are in blended instruction, it will really depend on the guidelines from the County of Public Health as to whether or not the track and the field can be used, and if it is being used and can be used under what guidelines, mask wearing, social distancing, so on and so forth. So it is a possibility for sure.
Let me share another positive that presents itself for Castaic, both for our ASC folks, and actually this is to Mrs. Hagman, the principal. Last night I sat on a webinar with 3 principals at schools that are currently opened in different areas of our state. They're at a different restrictive level. They're not at the purple tier, but they're at the red tier. And they talked about what works and what doesn't work and what advice they have to schools when we do open in a partial format. And one of the things they said was that the campuses that have lots of space outside are the places, that's where you can actually do much more instruction. So they actually are very creative about actually having classes or types of classes or segments of classes happening outside, which if you have not seen the Castaic campus, when you do see it, you're going to be blown away. by how panoramic this campus presents itself and how much open space there is for that purpose. So I thought of that, Ms. Bellick, when you talked about whether or not we can use the track for the track. We might be able to use it in unique circumstances and creative ways for some types of instruction. So.
Wonderful. So a couple really great questions rolling through. Will there be enough parking allotted for AOC students, and do they need to pay? So good news on both fronts. Castaic High School does not have drivers yet. So the only drivers that will be accessing student drivers will be our own. I think each kid could probably have 12 parking spots if they wanted it. Castaic has a huge parking lot, and Mrs. Hagman, if you could do us a solid and not charge us for that, that'd be awesome.
Well, actually probably will have student drivers because we do have kids that are turning 16 in the second semester of 10th grade, and we'll be charging them, so it's not equitable if we don't charge everybody. But it would be a very fair amount, and everybody would be assigned a number so that they know exactly where their parking space is and they are not fighting for any parking whatsoever. So we will be numbering our parking lot during the winter break, and we will be ready to hand out parking spaces left, right, and sideways. So it should be pretty great.
All right, wonderful. So maybe not 10, but now like 7 parking spaces per student. Okay, another question here. How often will the AOC students interact with the Castaic High School kids? Just wondering about the amount of kids in the hallways. So I can answer this, and Ms. Hagman, if I miss anything, please jump in. Our goal is not necessarily to sequester AOC from the Castaic High School students. That being said, our students are on completely different schedules. So AOC is going to continue with our 95-minute blocks, where Castaic has 75-minute blocks, and they only have 3 blocks where we have 4, and their day ends at 12:10, where our day ends at 2:55. So as far as interactions with Castaic students, our bell schedules don't line up in any way. That's not to say they may not be chit-chatting before or after school, but our intent isn't to sequester. It's just it's going to be the way that piece works out. And then as far as traffic, we are working on creating one-way traffic paths, kind of similar to what we're seeing in grocery stores, shopping malls, so on and so forth, because we're trying to minimize any kind of cutting back and forth. And Castaic has nice wide walkways where that will be possible.
There's a question about if you sign up for blended learning and your child starts in blended learning and it's difficult, doesn't like it, can we change our mind? And we're hoping that all the parents and families really talk and make the best decision possible, because it helps our scheduling. But absolutely, if somebody got there and needed to go back home or had been exposed to COVID somehow, or whatever the circumstances, they would be allowed to switch to the online learning. We are asking people, though, once they switch, then that would be a permanent switch. So it's not a back and forth type of a thing.
All right, I see a question.
Go ahead.
I was just going to jump in and say I see a question about concern about a one-way entrance to the school and the dry hills that surround Castaic High School. And I'll let everybody know that there is a secondary access that goes down through Romero Canyon on the south side of campus, which we only use if there's an emergency. So if there were an emergency, there is the Sloan Canyon Road that we can use, as well as Romero Canyon.
Is there a helicopter pad there now, or was that something that was scheduled to be there?
It's currently in development. We're working with the battalion chief to have a helipad up by the water tower up there. And so we would be in prime position for air protection.
Our AOC and Castaic students would be on campus at the same time. But as I understand it, they would be on different schedules, likely, meaning that there's a slightly different bell schedule. And that can be done either using bells or one of them not using bells. We just actually go without. And so, yeah, they'll be on campus at the same time. They'll again be one of the smallest schools in our district, even in that scenario. And but likely whatever breaks they might have probably won't align. Is that correct, Mrs. Velick? And
Yeah, the bell schedules do not align.
I had that
And-
experience, by the way, when I helped open Rancho Pico Junior High School. We actually had West Ranch on the school at the same time, and they were on two completely different schedules. And you know, the kids really didn't see each other that much because they had different lunches and different brunches. And so I would imagine that to the extent that we have brunch and lunch, it would be something similar.
So a couple common questions that have come up, just to clarify. If the decision is made to relocate temporarily to the Castaic campus, our AOC students will be taught by our AOC teachers. They're not going to all of a sudden be scheduled into Castaic's master calendar. So that will not be happening. I want to assure families of that. The other piece is if your student is online, and I see this in the chat, if your student is opting for the online only option, we are going to provide your student with an equivalent education. So they are not going to be looking at recordings. You know, they may be doing asynchronous work when students in the classroom are working with the teacher, but they will have access and the ability to log in for live lectures. That is our intent. We're going to try to run our classes as concurrently as possible because of the work demand and the workload. And then we're also trying to foster collaboration between our students online and our students in the classroom. The good news is that our district is working overtime to make sure our classrooms are suited, not just space-wise, but with technology to ensure that we have systems that allow the online students to be audible in the classroom and vice versa, and to make sure that the teacher is audible to both sets of students. So those are moving pieces that we have going. Colin?
Yeah, I was just gonna weigh in. I see a few questions on graduation and whether or not they'd be able to graduate from AOC. Just to let you know, there are no seniors at Castaic High School. AOC is still its own independent school, would still participate in their own graduation ceremony. Diploma would be an AOC diploma. It's tough to say right now what graduation looks like in our current state, but if we're able to have a physical in-person graduation, we would certainly work with our partners at COC to have it over there.
Another question about siblings being on the same cohort day. Siblings have priority on being placed in the same cohort. Okay, so if you have twins or children in different grade levels, we are going to make sure that they are cohorted together.
Probably work best is if you and David are in different cohorts, then I would only have
Be
to
mindful, folks, that you might want to silence your screen there. Ms. Velick, real quick too, can you, I think there may be some people in the waiting room, at least I got some text. I don't know if you want to take a look and see. Maybe
Let
not.
me take a look. I don't see anyone there. I've let everyone in.
Okay.
There's a question if a student is not feeling well, are they able to attend school from home that day? Yes, we definitely encourage that. If they feel well enough to be able to do their schoolwork and participate, it would be, it's one of the benefits actually of having the concurrent classroom.
I believe there were a couple of questions about proctored exams that were asked in the chat, and I think those are very important because I think there's specific guidelines surrounding how exams are given through COC, so perhaps we can answer that.
So that is actually a question that I am not sure about at the current time, but I do know that the college classes and instructors, some require proctored exams. And if that is the case, I'm going to work with our liaison at College of the Canyons, Paul Wickline, to determine specific protocols for how these tests would be proctored. So I have written that down as a question from the group, and I will follow up with an email when I have clear direction from the college.
And Ms. Velick, it sounds like you've done some really good work with your FAQs, and probably we can, if you can, I would save all these when we're done. And there may be some specific ones that we can come back and make sure that everybody has those questions answered as well.
Absolutely.
There is a question about what disciplinary actions will the school take if students do not adhere to social distancing. As with all of our schools, if a child or an adult does not comply, they will be asked to go to the isolation area. Parent will be called to pick them up, and we will ask them to join online only from there forward until they are able to actually adhere to the policies.
And Dr. Nielsen, what is the isolation area? I think every school has the same thing, correct?
That is correct. It's a tent with it's a pop-up tent with sides on it where that area is supervised. Student remains in that area until parent comes to pick the child up. It's located near the front of campus. Yeah.
Pardon the interruption. There's a question about when we anticipate starting this. Again, what this is we are positioning ourselves as a district to take the first step toward bringing students back to campus in this blended format. When that happens depends entirely upon when the county allows us to, and they would allow us to do so when the COVID numbers are low enough that we, based upon the rules and regulations and protocols that they have for us, they allow us to start bringing students back on campus. We're currently right now in the most restrictive tier. That's the purple tier, and we have to move down to one less restrictive tier. You can find that information on our website. But so when we're asking when, we are hoping that we might be able to do this in January when we return, but all of that will depend upon what the COVID numbers are like at least 4 weeks prior to the start of school. So it would be no earlier than the start of second semester, but it's very possible that this could be launched sometime during the course of second semester. It all depends on when we move into that less restrictive tier. But we're asking these questions now so that we can build the master schedule, get kids in the right spots, move everything over to Castaic should we choose to do this, so that when the time comes, we really can hit the ground running and bring kids back.
There's a question here about, is the district allowing families to carpool? That is actually a personal decision that each one of you can make for yourselves. That's totally up to you. The district doesn't have anything to do with it, but there is a question also about public transportation options to Castaic, and I was hoping Mrs. Hagman, could you answer that question?
As it stands right now, we are in the process of working with our transportation department to see if the public transportation will work with us to continue to provide service. Right now, they're not doing so, but hopefully if we are able to move into this blended learning environment, then we would be able to access the public transportation. So fingers crossed we can get back there. It does limit the amount of kids that can be on a bus though, because normally when we were running buses up to Castaic, there were about 60 to 65 kids on there. Obviously we cannot have those numbers. So that means that they would need to run more buses, and I don't know where we're at with that. So I'm working with transportation to determine that factor.
Thank you, Ms. Hagman. There's also a question that's really more for you also. When do we apply for or request a parking spot?
We are working on that. We will definitely get information out to you. I will work with Mrs. Bellick to get that information. It's never going to be denied because we have plenty of parking, but it's just about giving you a number and a spot so you know exactly where you're going. I don't like confusion like that. So we'll make sure that we get that information out to you ASAP.
Mr. Coleman, there's a question on the chat on when will the decision be made about this. Can you speak to that, please?
Yes, we wanted to bring back to the governing board this decision for consideration on November 18th. And so I believe Mrs. Velick and I talked a little bit. We wanted to extend the deadline for our AOC families through, actually, I think we said through November 19th. And we could even do by the end of that week, possibly, Mrs. Velick. What do you think about that?
I'm sorry, I was responding to a chat question.
Sorry, yeah, so we said that we will bring in the decision to the board by November 18th. And because that's a key piece of parents' decision, we can extend the deadline for making their final decision to the end of that week, I think. That's the 18th, so that would be 19th, 20th, the 21st, the Friday of that week. So, yeah.
In fact, I anticipate, if need be, keeping the window open as late as November 30th, which is because we have Thanksgiving break. So yeah, we'll make sure families have plenty of time to make a decision, and also receive guidance from me and my team should there be other questions that we haven't covered today.
And if there were some questions on here. There's a few folks that said they looked at this and thought we'd like to, we sent in our initial decision and we'd like to consider a possible change. Can they just email you directly on that, Ms. Velick, so that you can go in and make sure that that is corrected? Or what's the best way to do that if they've already responded?
I think to make sure that my data set is as clean and accurate as possible, I am going to have our own survey that's specific to Castaic High School, if that's the decision we make, blended learning, or online learning only, the options we're looking at. And I would like to be able to push that out and then use that as the official survey. So any surveys you have taken, don't worry about them. I will send something out the morning of Thursday, November 19th. So there's a question, if my child cannot, I have enough time to drive back home and do an online class for COC, will my child be able to do the COC class at Castaic High School in a classroom? And the answer to that is yes. There's going to be 3 large dedicated classroom spaces for students with open periods along with their COC classes to work from. So absolutely.
Mrs. Velick, there's a number of questions about proctoring COC tests. I'm hoping that's an area that you're able to answer.
Unfortunately, I don't have the details for that right now. That is something that I will meet with Paul Wickline about next week and get information out to all of the families as soon as I have a discussion with him.
We can put
Great.
that among other things in the FAQ. And just confirming to Christy, yes, you do not need to worry about responding to any survey prior to the one that will be dispensed on, sent out to you on November 19th. That's correct.
So there's been a couple questions about the hours that the campus will be open. This is an important piece of information for families to be aware of. The AOC bell schedule runs from 7:45 to 2:55 officially on paper every day. So as far as the hours, we are going to have very limited ability to supervise students. Part of the responsibility we take on in blended learning is ensuring students are safe and they're socially distant. So we are asking families to drop off about 7:30, 7:25 if there's a drop off involved. 15-20 minutes will be plenty of time to complete the drop-off process. In the afternoon, unless a COC class is starting within 30 to 45 minutes of period 3, our expectation will be that student will be going home to take their evening, late afternoon class. If the class is starting at 1:30, 1:45, or 2 o'clock, where we have a number of classes that start at that time, we will make accommodations for those students to remain on campus until 4:15 when those classes end. And there will be oversight and supervision. We need all students to be picked up within 30 minutes of the end of the school day. So with school ending at 2:55, all students that are not currently or actively in a class for COC should be picked up and on their way home by 3:30 p.m.
It looks like, Ms. Velick, that there may be some unique circumstances that we'll have to work through, and we will come up with solutions. We want to work with families, so there's some impossible pieces about like a class, that they have a class until 2:55 and online starting at 3. Maybe those are ones that can reach out to you specifically and we can come up with some solutions for.
Absolutely, and we are going to be very flexible with those kind of pieces. We want to make sure that as many students as possible have the opportunity to take their classes and alleviate stress and pressure. So if we need to get creative and think outside of the box for students, we will surely surely take those actions and measures.
There's another question on here about, do we know what the color tier is? Right now, Los Angeles County is in the purple tier, which is the one for the most widespread COVID. And so it is the lowest tier. We have to be able to reach the criteria of the red tier and then maintain the numbers for that red tier for 28 days before the county will even look at giving us the opportunity to return in a blended learning format.
Do I have the ability to share my screen, Ms. Bellick?
I believe so.
Host disabled participant screen sharing.
And the host is very...
You know, that's not that important. I was going to point him to it. I can actually direct people to it. If you haven't done this, please do check out the district website. And if you navigate to where it talks about the COVID-19 plan, it's one of the banners, the big banners that's available. There is a lot of very specific, detailed, helpful information about both what we're doing as the Heart District and what the county is currently listed as. And we try to make it as easily as accessible as possible.
Mr. Coleman, I have screen sharing enabled now.
Okay, so let me do that real quick because I do really want to encourage parents, if you haven't been here, to check this out, because there's been a lot of good work that's put into this, and I think it may answer a lot of your questions. So this is the main screen here. And if you look down the side here, you see that it says COVID-19 plan. It doesn't stop moving. And let me make this the whole screen. And if you take a look here, what it has is, someone just asked some questions about what color tier we're in. Right here, this blue section, if you hit on the state metrics and scroll down, it will show you, it tells you a little bit about what the metrics are. And then it shows you where we are as a county. You just hover over LA County right here, and it shows that we are in the purple tier, which is the most restrictive. That's widespread. And if you click on it, it gives you the data for why we're in this tier, and it goes back 3 weeks, 2 weeks, 1 week, and current. I mean, in this weird world that we're in right now, everyone is paying attention to what the numbers are of people who have been diagnosed with COVID in LA County. So that's a helpful piece of information. Hold on. And if we go back here, you can also go look under the second link, and it goes in more detail about LA County on, down to the granular detail of deaths, hospitalizations, death rate, etc. It helps explain why these restrictions are currently in place. And this is a timeline of what the Heart District has done since the start of the semester, and it goes up, and it includes a description of the 3 options. And if you have not had a chance to take a look at this, I would click on these because there are a lot of very helpful, detailed information. If you haven't looked at this already, this is information that was pushed out to each of you, but you can find it again here online. And one other thing I want to share with you is that if you look on the right-hand side here and you scroll down, and if you want to see a little bit about what will schools need to have in place in order to keep students and staff safe, what rules, what new guidelines, what kind of personal protective equipment needs to be in place, and how will students be able to interact with each other. There is a guideline established for all schools in LA County. It's called the Los Angeles County Department of Public Health Reopening Protocols, and we provide it for you here. We update it on a regular basis, so you can see that in the yellow, this is what is added as new information is revised and added to the protocols. These are very detailed, but a lot of parents understandably are concerned. Will my child be safe? What kind of protections will you put in place? And this will explain to you the work that we have put in place and will have in place when we welcome students back to campus. And I will stop sharing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Coleman. That was super helpful.
Mrs. Velick, if I can just weigh in on and follow up on what Mr. Coolman just said. we're following all of the protocols, but the county doesn't just take our word for it. They are sending out health inspectors to take a look at the preparations that we have done, and we've gotten very positive feedback from all of our inspections thus far. In fact, they've said that schools in general are by far the most compliant group, because they've looked at restaurants, they've looked at businesses, and they're very impressed with what they're seeing at the school sites and the Heart District as well. So,
Mr. Coleman, can I share a few comments?
Of course.
So one, I want to say thank you to the district staff, to Ms. Velick, to Ms. Hagman for the very thoughtful plans and considerations that have gone into what we are looking at as an option so that we can try and provide the very best educational option possible for our AOC students, given that COC will be closed for the spring semester. I saw a lot of questions from parents, and the questions that you shared also very thoughtful and things that you need to know and that we need to know as the decisions are brought to the board for consideration. So I want to encourage you to continue asking questions if there are things that we might have missed. This is the opportunity to help us continue to refine and revise plans so that we can, again, provide the very best possible option, given that COC will be closed for the spring semester. I truly know that the goal is to be as flexible as possible. So a lot of the questions were individual to, scheduling issues and things that might happen. I know that every effort will be made to make this work for your children and for your child. So again, I want to thank the district team and the administrators at AOC, or the administrator at AOC and the administrators at Castaic High School for really making, we're just so fortunate to have Castaic as an option. And when you saw the pictures, I know I saw some comments there about how beautiful the campus is and how much space it is. And again, I don't know who has been there to see the campus, but Ms. Hagman, if it's okay, I would hope that I could encourage those who haven't yet been to the campus to come and see for themselves. I'm a visual learner myself, and so when I get to see it and see my child in that environment, it just, I have a 9-year-old, and I told Ms. Hagman a couple years ago, look for him, he's on his way. So thank you again for this very informative meeting.
yeah, and just to mention that in our current state of affairs in the LA County, we can't just have people show up unannounced and tour the campus. We'll need to schedule that and organize that to maintain all of the protocols in place.
Good catch, Dr. Nielsen. Good catch.
Oh, Mrs. Storley,
Yes,
do you want to share a few words, Ms. Storley?
Yes, no, I was out taking down political signs, and it's windy out there, and I was in a little late. So no, I just repeat everything that Dr. Moore said. This team is behind you parents, and if you need something, you're going to get help from this team. And I know personally those of you who love AOC, and we're going to try to make it as good as it was within the confines of where we are. So no, I thank you so much. I will go. Oh, I did see a question on the chat. Will people be able to see this Zoom meeting that we're having right now again?
Yes. So we are actually recording this meeting, and once it's processed and such, I will be placing the entire recorded session online because this is a lot of information in a very short period of time. Additionally, the frequently asked questions that were sent out to families, we will also post that if you can give us till Monday. And between now and Monday, I will be sure to add in some of the questions that we've asked today. And then that being said, there are just a couple other questions that I wanted to answer before we wrap up. One of the questions was, how are we adjusting for holidays? So our families, you will be aware of the schedule I keep publishing. If there's a odd Monday off or a Wednesday or a Thursday, we are going to adjust and take advantage of that Flex Friday. So for example, next week we have Wednesday off. So Wednesday the kids get off, but then they have to come back to school for Friday. So we will adjust. Our goal is to minimize the loss of instructional minutes, keep that balance. Mrs. Basacci is here. She's one of our teachers and a parent. That is something that's really, really important, and just keeping that alignment nice and tight for both cohorts of kids. So I can answer that one with great enthusiasm and confidence. And then I think there's just lots of questions on the when, and as Mr. Coleman indicated, the when really depends on the direction from the county. Currently, we're trending in the wrong direction. We're hopeful that that will slowly but surely go away. I would like to open tomorrow, but Dr. Nielsen said no, so we will wait until we're in the red tier, and we're going to get there. Be assured of that.
Let's blame it on Dr. Nielsen.
Okay.
Make sure that's recorded. I like that.
It is in the recording.
Well, I think that this might be a good time for us to end this particular session. But the frequently asked questions, we'll make sure we capture all those before we close. And then, as has been noted by Dr. Moore and Ms. Storley, please continue. If you have individual questions, and Mrs. Velicky, they can email those to you directly, so that we're not closing the door to answering the individual questions that you have. That will also be your conduit to share thoughts prior to our presentation to the board on November 18th. We wanted to try to provide as much time and as much transparency and all the information to you all before we bring it to the board, so that, again, everybody knows what we're trying to accomplish, and you're able to kind of weigh all the different pieces and then let us know what you think. So we just appreciate you guys being here on a Friday afternoon after what presumably has been a long week for everybody. And just to reiterate what was said here, AOC means a lot to our district staff and our governing board. I'd like to share it means a lot to me personally. So know that we're bringing this to you because it's important for us to make sure that we take care of our AOC kids and our AOC families. I do think this is a good option for the kids, and we look forward to hearing your feedback. So with that, thanks everybody. I hope you all have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Have a good night. Have a great weekend.
Be safe. Thank you.